Welcome to the period poverty and what educators can do about it. People are going to be trickling in, so I do apologize for all the technical issues, but we're so glad that you're here anyway. And if someone does miss it because of the technical issues, it's okay. We're going to send out the recording to everyone afterwards, so people will still have access to this information. I want to introduce to you our amazing co-host for this session today. So Sophia, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight. My name is Sofia Carrillo Dahl, and I am one of the board members with Go With The Flow.
Thank you, Sophia. And I am Carrie Wolf. If we haven't yet met, I am the new AEA Learn and Lead Director. I prefer she, her pronouns. Again, thank you so much for joining us and so much for your patience. Some community agreements that we're going to kind of be instituting that we do for many of our trainings. They're pretty simple. We just ask that you be brave and kind. If you see something, say something. We know that there's multiple truths in all of our spaces, and so recognizing that when we kind of communicate with one another, either through the chat or by unmuting. Oh, excuse me. We're also going to be kind of looking for learning wherever possible. This topic can be a little uncomfortable sometimes, right? And sometimes we're being asked to think of things from a new perspective, or we're being asked to think of a new idea. And so really just being open to where we can all learn. Every single time I get to interact with the amazing Go With The Flow organization, I learn something new every single time. So I really appreciate that we have this partnership with them for this training and that they're here with us today. We're also going to be practicing examining systems of bias that naturally exist in not only our educational realm, but also in this topic of period poverty. And then, of course, we're also going to be kind of moving into action, right? We are a union and we are trying to actively advocate for our colleagues and for our students to make sure that they have all the resources that they need. So we're going to kind of walk you through some information, and we're going to ask for you to be, feel free to share things in the chat. Hopefully you have chat access, so you can kind of share any stories or links or resources that you might have. Some things that we're going to be talking about are the data. When you leave here today, I want you to be able to explain and have conversations with colleagues about why does this topic matter and how many people does it really affect. We're going to kind of be looking at all of this through the lens of racial and social justice as we do all of our trainings here at AEA for our Learn and Lead program, because we need to get in practice of calling out injustice when we see it. We're going to be talking about the connections to schools because we are educators, right? And there's things that we have the power to do to make life easier for our students and for our colleagues. And so how do we present those to our friends and family, and then how do we actually implement this in the classroom? So this is not new union work. In fact, this is work that our National Education Association has already been doing. We are just being more active in that work. So I'm going to share this amazing video with you that was presented at the NEARA this year. This is our Human and Civil Rights Award winner from across the amazing country of educators, and she did work specifically on this issue.
Period products are school supplies. If a student enters my classroom and they don't have a pencil, my job as the instructor is to make sure they have a pencil so they can learn. And we have to understand period products in the same way.
A period will start to occur during school day when young person is not really anticipating and isn't expecting it. So they're surprised by it, and they may not even have been prepared for it psychologically or emotionally, and may not have ever had any conversations with any adults about it.
There were a lot of kids who didn't have menstrual products, and that was a real problem because it really affects their education. And it can be difficult to bleed through your pants, and you might not want to go to school ever again.
Girls and all menstruators have been receiving the stigma and
the harassment that comes with periods when they bleed through, or just in general being ashamed of themselves.
So in the fall of 2019, a student in my classroom bled through their clothing, and then they got really badly bullied for it. And then some of our other club members were like, "Hey, Miss Millie, this isn't okay. What could we do to fix this problem?" Any good teacher says, let's research the topic. And it turned into a service learning project where students built a menstruation station to make sure no other student would not have a period product when they needed one. So at our school, we were able to provide these supplies for everyone. But then as kids kind of ask, what's it going to happen at a school that doesn't have a menstruation station? Like, what are those kids going to do? And as a teacher, I was like, well, that's a good question. Let's do some research. The students found out there was a bill in New Hampshire to provide period products at all public schools. So the kids asked me, like, Miss, can we do a bill? And I kind of said yes and figured we'd figure it out later. So in the fall of 2019, I had met with a legislator named Amy Peruso. She's a former teacher and turned legislator. So in the 2020 legislative session, they wrote our first bill, and it was doing great. The kids were testifying at the Capitol. The bill had passed our first committee.
When I moved to my tent, she did the active attention during class. 12-year-old girls like me are missing whole weeks of school because of their period.
And then COVID came and closed the legislature.
So the vast majority of the students who were really mobilized around this issue were actually middle school students. So anywhere between 6th and 8th grade.
I think the beautiful thing about middle schoolers is, yeah, they're wired for justice. They have this voice, they're becoming who they are, and they understand the world. I didn't give them anything they didn't already have. What I did was I amplified that voice, and we pulled open the doors in this building of power where the kids should be every day anyway.
And then third bill came around, and this is the bill we have right now, and it passed.
After 3 years of work, this year's bill, Senate Bill 2821, has passed the legislature. It's soon to be signed into law with a $2 million budget to provide period products at all Hawaii public schools.
Essentially now, period products will be available for any child that's menstruating, any young person that's menstruating at every public school whenever they need it. From a safe adult on campus, they won't need to go to the nurse to get it, but it will just be something that's considered an ordinary school supply.
I mean, there were so many people who were so ashamed of their period, so afraid to talk about it. But now that we've got the funding and now that we've got the products out there and they're going to be here soon in Hawaii schools, I'm so sure that everyone is going to be more open to talking about it.
And it really does open the door to a future where students are active and they have agency. We want good involved citizens. We want people who step up. I've had several parents tell me, Millie, I didn't know my kid could talk like this. Like, this is amazing. And crying as they're watching us on YouTube live in the Senate hearings. And it's incredible as a teacher to be able to see that for that parent connection, but also that parent then submit testimony on the bill, and it's getting them more involved. And that's what it's going to take, especially what's happening with women's rights right now. We need all hands on deck.
So I really love that video. I think it kind of shows that this is work that we can have, a stake in, and that we can make sure that we're fighting and advocating for our students. I do want to introduce one of our statewide leaders to kind of show the amazing things that are happening across our state. I want to introduce to you, if you don't already know her, Amber Gould, who is our AEA treasurer, is joining us on the webinar today. And there's going to be some opportunities to hear more from her. I also just want to shout out that she is also a top 5 Teacher of the Year finalist. So that's pretty amazing. And she's joining us because it's something that she's passionate about and that she wants to see AEA take on. So I would love to be in a position where we are like Hawaii and saying, oh, look, now all of our schools have access to period products. How amazing would that be? And all led by students and parents and educators working together. So we're going to kind of dive into some of that data, and I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to talk about some of the data that she knows about why period poverty is even a topic we need to talk about, especially in Arizona.
Thank you, Carrie. So we're going to go ahead and start off with what is even period poverty. We hear this term being turned around or thrown out all the time, right? But basically period poverty is the inability to access menstrual hygiene products due to financial hardships. We saw that specifically in the school districts through COVID, you know, when everything was being shut down and they weren't really getting the resources they needed at schools. Also, the statistics for teens in the United States are comparable to that of those countries with a lot less resources. And it can lead to physical, psychological, and educational issues, especially because it's known that people who menstruate, especially when they're teenagers and their first times, they end up missing school. One out of every 5 kids will end up missing school because they got their period during school and they were too embarrassed or they didn't have the access to the products. And also lack of access to menstrual hygiene products leads to increased risk for infection and feelings of body shame. And that's really important to know because a lot of our menstruators do go through that when it's their first time in school. Top menstrual hygiene barriers for people who menstruate. Lack of support from teachers. This is not being aware of the issue or adding to embarrassment. Teasing by peers. We all know how kids can be in school, especially when you're in that 5th, 6th grade. Some of our menstruators are starting at 5th or 6th grade at younger ages. And when there's the stigma around it, that's when the teasing comes. A lack of cultural acceptance. We have limited economic resources. Not being able to afford new menstrual hygiene products is a really huge thing, especially here in the state of Arizona, which we're one of the states, and we'll talk a little bit about it more, about the pink tax, right? I think we've heard a lot of that, and we'll talk a little bit of what that is. Inadequate water sanitation, not having access to a shower or restroom. And menstrual cramps, pain. That's a huge one. And I think a lot of people don't really realize it. For example, we have endometriosis, which is an actual physical thing that happens. I actually suffer from that. And when I started my periods, I had no idea why I felt so. It literally knocks me out. I couldn't go to school. I would miss school, but nobody really talks about what, you know, not only are you menstruating, but the effects that it comes through menstruating, and it actually alters our lives at times. Here we have a little bit of national period poverty data. 51% of students have worn period products for longer than recommended. And that's a huge problem that we have too, especially not only not having the access, but not knowing how long a pad should stay in, not knowing when you should switch out a tampon if they're using tampons. And this is what causes infections and can cause different things. Sorry, my computer froze. 82% believe that there is free tampons or pads. There should be free menstrual products. Free TP toilet paper. There should be free menstrual products. So those are national data that's being taken of students saying, hey, you know, if sometimes we could get toilet paper, menstrual products should be free. 75% say there is a negative association with periods. That's very common, especially in different cultures like Latinx communities. That's a big stigmatized. It's something that you really don't talk about. Somebody else should be teaching your kids that information. That's how I grew up in my household. So it's a big thing. And 70% say that school environment makes them especially self-conscious about their periods because it's not very talked about. It's not something that teachers are discussing with their peers. I know, and I'll get a little bit more of the details in the schools, but now I'll turn it over to Carrie to follow on with the rest.
Yeah, I just want to add to that if any of you have ever had to teach the human growth and development curriculum at your school, you may have even had seen some of the questions that students ask. So as a middle school teacher myself, I was amazed at how many students, when it came time to talk about this subject in human growth and development curriculum, were concerned that if they started their period that they might die, or had very real concerns that something was wrong with their body because they were bleeding, or who were scared because it's blood, and that's how they were worried, what does this mean? And so I think they're in addition to all this negative stigma and exactly what Sophia was talking about, this kind of unknown is there, this what does this mean, and how do I take care of myself? How do I support how do we support each other, and how do we support our students? I love this quote because I find it very interesting, and it's something that's very thought-provoking. So the founder of the organization, the nonprofit Period, actually said that she's heard stories of women who use various things in place of menstrual hygiene products, whether that's grocery sacks, toilet paper, things that could be really toxic for your body, that people have just more readily available. And even socks is something that students are sometimes using in place when they don't have period products. And imagine the germs that they're introducing into their body, or imagine how self-conscious they must feel when they're having to use these alternative to hygiene products. So we can't get away from the subject without talking about the racial social justice lens that's over all the work that we do within the Arizona Education Association. And there is a really strong tie and correlation to some of the racial social justice issues that we know about and period poverty.
Yeah, Carrie, so one of those is the intersection of period poverty with race. So it is statistically known that Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are impacted the most by period poverty. And that goes into the racial and ethnic income disparities. There was a graph pulled up, and basically from 2000 to 2019, it shows that Black, Latinos, Latinx, and Indigenous communities, it wasn't in here, but they were the lowest income paid families, therefore led to the lack of access to afford, tampons, pads, or whatever it was that they needed. And also the pink tax. There's 30 states in the United States that still have this pink tax. And basically it's, people can go get a Snickers bar and not pay a tax for it. But the moment you want one tampon, you do have to pay a tax on it. And Arizona, unfortunately, one of the states that we have the pink tax. And there was a statistic that came out too that was mind blowing that said people who menstruate are estimated to spend an additional $115 million per year just on menstrual products. So that's a huge disparity, especially when you see that Black, Brown, and Indigenous families aren't even making a livable medium wage. And that's just how it is. And then we can go on to the next intersection.
There's also an intersection between period poverty and LGBTQ issues. In addition to students who identify as female struggling with some of the stigma surrounding periods, there's also a lot of our students who are gender nonconforming or trans might have even more stress attached to it and even more stigma because menstruation may not fit within what they are wanting and expecting of their bodies to do. So that additional stress can be pretty harmful, especially when we think about the fact that 1 in 3 LGBTQ students is at a higher risk for attempted suicide. And so having that kind of context of it's not just our students who identify as female, but also our students who identify as gender nonconforming or trans, who are struggling with this additional burden on top of period poverty, of the mental stress that goes with periods. And also we know statistically that our trans students, our students who are trans are more likely to live in poverty, and therefore they have higher rates of period poverty. And there's also, we know, higher rates of homelessness around our LGBTQ youth, especially. And this is something that's kind of a national statistic, but also a statistic here in Arizona.
Yeah, and just to little bridge jump off of that too, is that we also try to move away from language that defines, a female or a woman as a menstruator. That's why we say people who menstruate are menstruators, because not all menstruators are women. So that's something really inclusive language that even in schools you're talking about that's something, because then it clicks in the kids' head like, oh, they're finally being seen as who they are. So that's a big thing too. So now we're going to move on. Oh, this is your part, Carrie. Sorry.
You're good. Yeah, we're going to talk about how this connects to schools, and we're hoping that some of the data that's provided here is something that you could show and talk to admin about, right? That you could talk to your school board members about, that you could have some honest conversations with ally organizations about why period poverty is something that educators specifically should be addressing. So this is something, again, that I think is very thought-provoking. Oftentimes one of the pushbacks we hear on this topic of like, well, we already do this, right? Like we already offer period products in the nurse's office, or we already have period products, the social worker takes care of that. And the pushback that, I want to send out into the world is, yes, but what if that's all the way across campus? How much extra time are the students missing of class because they have to walk all the way across campus to get that, and not just, go use the restroom that's close to them? How much embarrassment are they going to feel having to go and ask the nurse all the way at the front office when they're actively bleeding through their clothes? And so really thinking about, it's not just like, okay, well, we have period products in this one location at the front of the school, but how can we make them more accessible and less stigmatized so that students have access to it without the shame of walking across campus, without the additional stress of missing more class? And what if they miss these certain directions, or what if they miss some important information? And so making sure that we are providing opportunities for our students to have access closer to them, to get them back into class, which is the goal, right? Like our priority is educating our students. How do we give them more time and more instruction?
Yeah, and following that, the data clearly shows, there's data that shows 83% hide their period products when they walk out of class to go to the bathroom. Even as an adult, I saw myself doing that. If I was at a restaurant, or if I was out somewhere, sometimes you still get into those modes like, oh, let me hide it in my pocket. 65% of students not want to be at school when they have their periods. And I am still a person that, even now as a 35-year-old woman, because I have endometriosis, sometimes I have to call out of work because I literally cannot function. And we should take that into consideration when it comes to our menstruators as well. 38% often or sometimes cannot do their best schoolwork due to lack of access to period products. And that word accessibility is huge. This is some Arizona period poverty data. So 1 in 4 teens in the US have missed school due to lack of access to period supplies. I touched on that a little bit earlier. And 92%, and this says female students because this was data done just on females, but in Arizona, grades 7 through 12 attend a Title I eligible school. So that's a huge disparity too, that we're not connecting the dots, that a lot of our menstruators through the age where they are menstruating are in Title I schools, which tend to be lower income socioeconomic schools.
And some things that you can do to kind of actively address this is just start asking some questions, even if it's just introspectively, because we know that like the more information we have, the more power we have, right? The better we can identify opportunities for us to address this. So really think about who teaches human growth and development curriculum at your school. Are there opportunities to look at that curriculum and see if it's inclusive and see if it's destigmatizes menstruation? What kinds of information are students getting or not getting about their own bodies when it comes to this topic? Are there ways that we can provide resources, even if it's just like a fact in the bathroom stall, right? That give them information about how to take care of their own bodies so that they don't get infections, or they don't get sick, or they aren't exposed to too many chemicals and get toxic shock syndrome. Like, how do we give students this information? And again, doing that within the channels that exist, right? Because we don't want to step out and create our own curriculum. Human growth and development curriculum is definitely under fire right now, statewide. And what's included in that curriculum is very politicized. So what are some opportunities that we have for providing information that help our students take care of their own bodies, but also making sure that we're advocating for change where appropriate, at the school board level, at the district level, with curriculum instruction. Thinking about too, like, what are some ways that we can ease fear and anxiety around this? Oftentimes as a teacher, my students will come up to me and they'll whisper and like, I have to go to the bathroom. And usually they're whispering because they have to go to the bathroom because they're menstruating. Whereas if they're not, then they'll just say, I have to go to the bathroom, really proudly. And so it's really interesting the difference that students experience, even just in asking to use the restroom, when they know that they're menstruating. And so really thinking about what are some things that educators can do, even if it's just, acknowledging the fear and anxiety and validating their feelings, and then providing them words of encouragement. We're going to kind of go into some practical classroom solutions, because that's really what all educators want, right? Like, what can I do in my school? What can I do in my classroom that will actually make a difference? So one of the things that I want to shout out, and I'm going to, Amber, if you're comfortable unmuting, I'd love for you to talk more about this. But, you know, in the video, they talked about menstruation stations. And this is an example from our wonderful Amber Gould of what her menstruation station looks like in her classroom. This is something that you could easily include, just like you would have hand sanitizer, just like you might have masks in your classroom, just like you might have deodorant in your classroom, that spray deodorant that students can use. You can have these products available to them in a place in your classroom where it's not, again, that walking across campus. Amber, do you want to talk about what your station is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So my station, I just have all sorts of different products in it. There's tampons, there's pads of all different sizes. I have some like makeup removing wipes. I got some toothbrushes and toothpaste in there too. It's not just menstruation. There's some other products in there to help. I have the spray deodorants and stuff as well. The one above that has like Band-Aids and masks and other things too. Students know they can use this whole little desk that I have there has all sorts of products for them specifically. And it's also right next to the door and right next to the sign out sheet. So as students are over there, they're able to grab whatever supplies they might need, and then they're able to do our sign out process as well and just go to the bathroom. So it's not anything that it's in front of the classroom. It's in the corner by the door. They can have their privacy as they go through this. There's baggies in there too, so are like little zip, like the cute little Ipsy bags, you know, that I have a ton of because I thought I needed all those bags at one point, you know, that kind of thing. And so we're able to utilize, students are able to utilize that space, and then they'll let me know if stuff is out, and I check it on occasion too. I'm lucky that I have very vocal kids. But this is something like I have a lot of products in there. One of the things that I do want to highlight, and one of the members on this call is CC Minks from the Glendale Union Education Association. And we are in the process of making this a more district-wide thing. And our local association is working on purchasing products and getting them out to our members who want to have a station in their classroom, or who just need additional supplies. Because I'm going to be honest, looking in that drawer alone, that was probably well over $50, $60 worth of supplies. And so we know that these cost quite a bit, but CC has really been pushing for this across our district as well, and at our school, because it was a student club that brought this up, and they were kind of told no on their campus. And so I'm not used to being told no. So we're pushing for this district-wide now. So we have a good plan in place, and it came from students. It came from members who know that this is important. So we're hopeful that stations like this are going to be district-wide, and we're going to make sure that stigma is removed.
That's so amazing. Thank you for talking about the amazing work that your local is doing on top of everything else you guys are doing, right? You're also making sure this is something that's a priority. And I just want to highlight that Amber talked about, like, the fact that the station is right next to the door, right? It's right next to the exit, right next to the sign out sheet. Like, it's a natural place that students would go. You know, sometimes I think we're trying to just, you know, find space for things, right? And we just want to be really conscious of the places that we put these materials, because we want students to be able to access them without feeling like they're drawing attention to themselves. Like putting it at the front of the classroom, you know, they might feel a bit less likely to go and get those items, versus, like Amber said, if it's with everything else that's already there. And so then students don't know, like, oh, you're going to get a menstrual product, you're just going to get a school supply, which is what your menstrual hygiene products are. And she mentioned specifically like the additional cost too. In the link, the wakelet.com/@learn-and-lead, there's actually a sample example donors choose project that you can kind of use to help you if you're thinking about putting a station in and you're starting from scratch. And we're going to talk about another resource for you in just a hot second. But if you're looking to kind of expand and have some of these products in your classroom and you're worried about the cost, because we already pay so much out of pocket for some school supplies, please do look at that example donors choose project and see if there's some things that are helpful in that for you. And also remember, I just want to put this out there because there is a lot of stigma around products like cups, right? Like the menstrual cups and also the tampons, right? So knowing your students and knowing like some communities, some families may not be okay with their student using a tampon, or maybe they've never used one before and the first time they're going to use it is because that's the only thing in the drawer. So what kinds of products can we put in there to not only make sure that all students have access to products that are comfortable for them so that they can focus on what's happening in the classroom, but also just being aware that there is some stigma on some of those products. So kind of know your community and know your students. I also wanted to share this resource for you. So on the Wakelet that's in the chat, and I'll put the link in there again, there's also this free sign for your menstruation station. If you would like it, please feel free to use it however you want. And there's some in different sizes as well. So it's just a kind of inclusive sign that just says like all bodies are welcome. And what kind of supplies are in the drawer. And if you want a different edited version, just let me know. It's super easy to make. Oops, that's the Zoom link. Wait, that would have been helpful for Mobilize to send out prior to that. I'll try adding it into the chat again in a second. But as always, I want to just like highlight for you, like, please make sure that when you put these resources in your classroom that you just communicate with your administrator. And I don't mean like, be discouraged from doing things with period poverty, but just recognizing that there's that stigma out there and that educators are often under attack for tackling some of these issues. Give them a heads up, let them know like, hey, I want you to know I have these period products. The purpose and intent is just to make sure that students are in class. That's really hard to argue with, right? Like we want students to be in class as much as possible, rather than, I'm standing up for this issue, which is something that, kind of sets off red flags. It's like, oh, educators working on issues, what? It's almost like they have thoughts and opinions outside of their classroom. So just kind of recognizing that, the situation that we're in and just being upfront and honest with your administrator. And another really common pushback that I hear from educators is, well, the boys will be traumatized, right? Like if they see a period product, if they see anything that even that sign back there, when I showed it to my coworkers, he was like, that's a lot of red. Is that supposed to be blood? And I was like, no, it's just red. And so there's lots of thoughts and opinions about like the way that boys are going to take having these products in the classroom. And the pushback that I want to put out there is, let's not underestimate our students, especially not based on a stereotype of a gender role, right? Lots of students of all genders across the spectrum have stigma that is attached to the topic of periods, but we can kind of help shape the way that we form responses to that in a way that let students know that we're prioritizing their bodies and that we're prioritizing them as human beings over just being a number or a name on the roster. And so saying things like all bodies are safe and welcome in this classroom, and we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that that's true. We have these products because it's for people's health and safety. We look out for each other at the school. That's why there's deodorant in the drawer. And just addressing it as a way of like taking care of one another rather than feeding into the stigma that boys are going to think ew, and also that only boys have been conditioned to have this stigma. And the other thing that I also want to challenge is we shouldn't let a few uncomfortable people stop us from doing what we know is best for our students. And sometimes you almost have to respond with a little bit of humor, right? Like, oh my gosh, what is that? Oh, that's a menstrual hygiene product. If you don't need it, please leave it in the drawer, right? And just kind of making sure that students know this is, again, about people's health and safety. This is not about anything other than that. And now I'm going to turn over to Sophia because I want you guys to know, I can't hype this up enough, but Go With The Flow is the organization that Sophia is here representing, who agreed to help us with this project. And I want to give Sophia the opportunity to talk about the amazing work that the organization does. And on the screen, you'll see a video here. This is Demetra Presley, who is the amazing kind of founder of this organization, this nonprofit. Amazing human being. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to talk about what does your organization do? How does it interact with educators?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited because I heard a lot of amazing things. And I know that sometimes period products are really expensive. I mean, sometimes even as educators, I've heard educators say, you know, I provide them, but there's only so much I can provide because it's so expensive. Well, great news, guys. That's why Go With The Flow is here. We do a lot of different things, but our main purpose is this, you know, that all students and community members will have access to the period products and that it won't disturb their schooling or anything. So one of the things that we do, and actually, can we play the video first of Demetra so she can kind of introduce it, and I'll go into depth of exactly what we do.
2 years ago, Demetra Presley learned that Phoenix area teachers were buying period products for students on their own dime because of restrictions in school budgets. So she created a nonprofit to help women and students in vulnerable populations.
My name is Demetra Presley, and I am the executive director of Go With The Flow. And this Saturday, we had our Tampon Tribe Community Pack Day, which is when community members come together to make period packs for our community partners. This morning, volunteers are making 200 period packs for a youth group in Tucson. Go With The Flow has made more than 32,000 period kits since its inception in 2018.
Because of COVID-19, Presley says Saturday's event was the first one since February. She also mentioned that pack parties can be hosted in people's homes.
My daughter actually received a pack through her school when she went through her home class. And so we connected with us oh, got it from that. Yeah, I love it. I volunteered with them. And then when my mom shared the event on Facebook, I was like, I want to go.
Go With The Flow is always accepting donations. In the future, Presley plans to host a pack party on the second Saturday of each month. All volunteers must wear a mask.
So Go With The Flow's mission is to ensure access to menstrual supplies in our community. We believe that no student should have their education disrupted or miss school because they don't have access to period supplies, which currently happens to 1 out of 5 students in the United States. We provide period products to not only students, but also community members who are low income or homeless.
For MCO 502, I'm Molly Jamison.
Yay, that's exactly the work that Go With The Flow does, and our beautiful executive director, Demetra Presley. So I'm gonna take on how the different things that we do and the links to go. So in the chat, I'm gonna put our website that you can follow us. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're a little bit more active on Instagram, and this is the areas that we post when we're having our community pack days. So one of the ways that anybody can get involved is through our distribution list. So this is for teachers, school districts, anybody who wants period products in their classroom. You would go to our website, and I'll put it in here real quick, and you sign up for the distribution list, and we have a certain Saturday of the month where we pack everything for you guys. So you guys kind of let us know, we rather have panty liners and pads and the overnight, and we specifically pack them to what your needs are. And we have them in cute Ipsy bags as well. So when the kids have them, or the students, sorry, I always say kids because I feel like they're all babies. But when the students, yeah, they are. When the students have them, they're just in cute little Ipsy bags, and it looks like a cute little makeup bag rather than, this stuff. We have a whole bunch of different ones. So that's the one way. I know that this month is closed, but we are going to open it in. It's kind of like a first come, first serve. As we all know, this is ran by volunteers. So we try to fulfill as many orders a month that we can. And I just dropped it in the chat, our website. And I also dropped in the chat our Google form. It's closed right now, but on October 1st, it will open if anybody wants to sign up for a distribution list. Also, one of the big things that just happened is that Go With The Flow was granted some pandemic relief funds. And in those pandemic relief funds, we were allotted a certain amount of money to start putting dispensers in schools. So if you guys have any interest in that, or you guys can connect us with anybody in your school district that's usually your governing board members who would pass something like that. But we have funds to put dispensers in schools at no cost to the school. That would be something that go with the flow. So that's one of the projects that we're working on as well. Another way you can get involved is volunteer your time. The schools, and we don't only distribute to schools. Go with the Flow has opened their doors to community centers. So like Unsheltered Phoenix, Case sometimes, Andre's House, a whole bunch of little nonprofits that we have around. In Tucson, we have some up north as well. And in Phoenix, in the local area, we distribute period packs to them too, for their organizations as well. So volunteering is a great time. If you can volunteer one Saturday and pack all the fun stuff, it's a great time. In October, if you follow us on our social media, we're going to have a Halloween event. So sometimes we have special time. Donate station. You can donate any supplies. You can host. I know we have partnerships in coffee shops or nail salons. Always have a donation station for, and that's how we get some of the donations, because the majority of the stuff that we get is ran through, donations that us and the money that they give us. So these are all three different ways that everybody can get involved. And then I don't know if Carrie is frozen, but oh yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
I might be freezing. I apologize. Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm not breaking up.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to draw your attention to, in addition to the October 1st deadline, which mark that in your calendar, because that was the date that Sophia said the application launches the new Google form to get on the distribution list, and it's first come, first serve. In addition to that date, mark October 8th on your calendar as well, because this is actually period action day. And so I wanted you to have this date kind of, ready and available, just because on October 8th, we're going to be sending out, and actually a little bit before, we're going to be sending out some social media posts that you can share, kind of increasing awareness around this issue. Because in order for us to ever take action on this issue, right, especially at the state level, we need to make sure that there's enough people aware of the issue in order for us to build capacity around it and then also build action. So that's just kind of something to flag on your radar. You're going to see those social media posts for Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So feel free to share those when you get them. And now, again, it's time to move into that action piece, because we don't want you to leave this room, this space, and keep what you have heard in just your notebook, right, of your notes, your conversations. We want you to spread the word. And so I want you to kind of think about, like, what are some things that are in your sphere of control, things you can do within your own space, within your own classroom. And then what are some things that you can do in your sphere of influence, right? Like people who are willing to listen to you, people who you can talk to broaden your impact. Who's one other person on your campus that you feel like will be passionate about this topic with you and help you advocate for some of this? Sometimes advocacy work can be a little bit lonely if you feel like you're the only one doing it. And so who's one person you can tap into to help you to organize around this and kind of be your thought partner? And what does organizing look like? So we know what organizing looks like for political issues. We know what organizing looks like for school board races, right? We know what that looks like, but what does organizing around this issue look like? So I want you to just to kind of help you, I've put some questions up here to think about. Some things to think about are, who else cares about this at your site or in your local? If you have if you can name 5 people at your site who also care about this topic and want to make an impact, then you have a committee of people who you can go to advocate for change on this. If you have multiple sites, if you have your entire local talking about this, like what's happening in Glendale Union Education Association, then you can build even more power, right? Your sphere of influence will grow. So how many people can you identify that are interested in this topic that you could have pull together to talk about what are some real solutions that we can implement within our school and our district? And then think too about who are some potential allies, right? Could there be some PTA or PTSO or PTO organizations that you could partner with to supply some of these supplies? Are there small businesses who might be willing to sponsor some of these things, or who might have access to tiny Ipsy bags, right? Who are some school board members that you could reach out to and say, hey, this is something that we're passionate about. Can you help us? Can we work on this together? Who are some social workers and counselors and nurses who are already probably handing out some of these products? And do they have any ideas about what are they seeing? What are they experiencing? Are people coming to get them all the time? Do students even know about them, that they're in the front office? Are there things that they need help with to make sure that students are taking advantage of those opportunities that already exist? And then what are some things that you can do to meet the needs of your specific students, right? Who else can you bring to the table? In organizing within AEA, we like to talk about let's build the table ourselves, right? And then invite other stakeholders to it. We don't need to wait for permission to act on these things that we know are good for educators, we know are good for students. So how can we build the table and invite other people to it? Whether it's, hey, I am, me and my teacher partner, we are both really passionate about this. Okay, great, we've got a table. Who else can we invite? How else can we have this conversation? And then thinking too about who needs more information, because like I mentioned earlier, right, we can't move people to action if they're not aware of the issue. We can't move to action unless we've built capacity, right? Again, building that table, bringing people to it, having conversations, and then we can move into action. So how can we build awareness and build capacity around this before we move into action? So we bring everybody with us instead of leaving some people behind. And what are some resources that you already have that you could tap into or that you know that you need? If it's money and you're wanting to do a project, right, you could write a grant to AEA or NEA to get funding for your project. If it's people, okay, are there some volunteers who could help you within partner organizations like Go With The Flow? Are there AEA staff members who could come out and help you, support you doing some of this work? Is there another local that's already doing something like this that you could tap into what they're doing? And then also, this is one that we don't talk about enough, right? Which is, how do we claim and share our victory, right? We're really good about working behind the scenes to solve all these problems, but we don't tell people about the things that we're doing, right? We're not great at telling our own story and telling about the things that we're doing that move people, that are helping and supporting our students and our colleagues. So start thinking about what are some ways that you can claim and share your victories. So if you get a menstruation station in 5 classrooms, right, how can you celebrate that? Because again, we need to kind of refill our buckets, right, as we go. And if you do have stories and success stories that you want to share and kind of blast out there, I have my email address on the screen. I'd love pictures. I'd love stories. I'd love to share and kind of, again, show other locals, this is what our member leaders are doing, and here's how you can do something like this too. I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to talk about her school district, actually, which is doing some really exciting work around this topic.
Yeah, so on top of it being a board member with Go With The Flow, I am also the president of the Creighton School District, and we actually partnered with Go With The Flow in March of 2021. It was great because it was one of the things, and we heard that earlier today, that, well, we already have those, our nurses have them. Okay, well, how many of our students know where the nurse's office is? How many of our students how far do our students have to walk? And these were actual questions that I was asking our district, sometimes we do the bare minimum and we think that's sufficient and we think that's inclusive or equitable for everybody, but not if only one nurse in the whole campus has it. So when we partnered in March 23rd of 2021, not only did we partner up with them, but we also have a foundation within our school districts. So now all our classrooms, students, teachers, and community members have access to free menstrual products for themselves. Since then, hundreds of emergency packs, monthly packs, and pad packs have been dispersed. So we do all different types. We just have the pad ones for the schools. We have emergency ones that includes tampons and all other things. We just have so much variety of things that we can be partnering up, and the help is there too. One of the things that we really didn't touch on, and I know that we always get tired of talking on this, but it shouldn't be up to nonprofits to be doing this. So the part of organizing really needs to start pressuring our legislators to pick up the pace and stop benefiting or stop, letting volunteers and nonprofits to do this. That Hawaii story was great. And if it can be done in those states, why are we not doing that here? So that's one of the things that Go With The Flow is hugely connecting with legislators as well, to get rid of that pink tax, to get, wire schools, at least make sure that all schools have this access to them already. So those are all a bunch of things that Go with the Flow is doing. We're also in a part of a curriculum too that we're trying to develop for children to understand how long, you should leave the pad on, or how long these things are working. I'm using it on my own nieces and nieces who have gotten their periods, and making sure that, does this make sense to you? And if it doesn't, they're actually helping us with the curriculum. So when we're putting it out there at the schools and presenting them, it's at their level and they understand how to take care of their bodies and understand their bodies. So like I said, I can't say wonderful things about Go with the Flow, but it really has opened even my eyes on everyday things. And we would love for you guys to come volunteer, to share our information, or whatever it is.
So I know that we're not done talking about this, and I know that you have 1,001 things to do. So we're gonna wrap up this conversation. Again, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. We know it was a lot of information in just an hour, right? But and we know that your time is very valuable. So I wanted to just lift for you. If you haven't heard, Learn and Lead has launched a new podcast, and so you can scan this QR code, or you can go to anchor.fm/Learn and Lead and type that in. And we are now on 5 platforms, which is Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Anchor, and Spotify. So that is an opportunity that's available to you. And we might be having an episode coming up soon also about this period poverty topic and giving some more stories surrounding this topic. So look out for that. That should be really, really exciting. Next steps. So in order to get your professional development certificate, which I know some of you are really anxious to get, you do need to fill out the evaluation, which will be emailed out after this training is over to the email that you have for Mobilize. I'm going to try to put the link into the chat as well, assuming that my computer will allow me to. But if you'll fill out this evaluation, it's really important that we get the data, because webinars like this and the Learn and Lead program is only funded through grants through the NEA and at the AEA level. And in order to continue to get those funds, we need to be able to show that there's value to building our organization through this work. So I'm gonna ask if you please wouldn't mind filling out the evaluation. And again, I'm gonna put that link in the chat for you because it looks like it is gonna load. Thank goodness, how exciting. So copying the link for you, and it should be popping into the, oh my gosh.
I did it for you.
Oh, thank you. I don't know what's happening. I feel like all the technology that can go wrong is going wrong, right? Like it's Murphy's Law.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks for having my back, Sophia. I appreciate you. And then again, reminder that there is the Wakelet available. So every single resource that we referenced today is in that Wakelet. Every single template, every single classroom resource that we talked about, there's so much in there. And please feel free to share that Wakelet link with anyone, even if they weren't able to attend the training. Sophia, you're the absolute best. Thank you. So with that in mind, have a fantastic rest of your evening. Have a good one. Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.